didn't have an open source processor when they came 5 or 6 years
Well,
ago.
there's no, is there, I mean, it should be fine, right? For Raspberry Pi, it's not performance limited, right?
Yeah, but they're just not doing it for, I mean, you can't get any cheaper than a Raspberry Pi dev board. In fact, the price will probably go up if they go to a RISC-V processor.
And free is such a great price to be.
Yeah.
Use for video processing.
So that's a good question. There's not really a whole track record with RISC-V and video processing. With the Broadcom chips, it was in the processor, right, Peter? They had some sort of proprietary GPU, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep. I figured that.
Depends who.
Do you know what that means for
Sometimes
bonus?
we have
Pardon?
to get in.
Do you know what that means
I've
for
been to
bonus?
Worcester
Because they
with
separate it.
They're much more technical.
Engineers.
Yes, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Are they gonna
What's this
merge
kind
back?
of runs it?
Probably merge back. I think the two PIs at low risk are still in academia, but it sounds like they might leave and go back because yeah, you're right.
By the way, do you know of a DAC solution for Raspberry Pi Vivo board or something where you can actually use
I
it
went to WPI for
measurements and
high school.
The TI guys are here tomorrow for their IAP. Also send you a link.
It was pretty easy.
What's their
There's an IAP. It's called
Just go off.
3 o'clock TI RSLK robotics kit, but it's open. It's open to the public. They did it Tuesday night too. So
thinking with IT robotics systems?
She went.
yeah, but it's
First time she
either
went, she
BeagleBoard or BeagleBone based or something.
The last couple of times.
So those guys.
They call it.
Yeah, I got something to
She went 2
Probably
times.
for deep learning, probably.
Well, it's a long night. It's only listed from 3 to 6, but they were there till 8:30 last
Yeah,
night.
no, we have, I got one.
Barry, she's the youngest one in their class.
Who's doing deep learning tomorrow night?
No, no, no.
Okay, we're all set.
Week long.
Okay,
Oh. Yeah.
okay, we can go ahead and start. You've got your sign-up sheet?
Oh, yeah. Hey, you want to start something around?
Sure.
Thanks.
Anyway, Dennis Payne is going to be talking about Linux game development. I'll let Dennis take it.
All right, I'm Dennis Payne. I am a programmer. I went over and wanted to be a programmer when I saw that system, the Atari 2600. I had chicken pox, me and my brother, and we got the Atari 2600 to keep us occupied while we were at home. And so ever since doing that, I've wanted to do games and program them.
So that's not a retro modded PS4.
No. I have tried to hook up the Atari 2600 that I have, but I don't have the connector to the TV, so that has failed so far. I have been involved in one commercial product called Devil's Whiskey, and that's what you see right there. It is in the style of the old Bard's Tale games, if you ever played them from the 80s. I do a lot of open source development. So this is Ostrich Riders, which is a clone of Joust. I was not the original developer of it, but my kids wanted to try out Joust, so I took this program, got it to actually run again. And then when they wanted to play at the same time, I made it 3 players so that I could still play. One over here is a game I've been working on called Open Game Art Movie Video Game. It's supposed to be a video game based on this fictional movie. Tiny Arcade, or the Pocket Arcade, which is a little Arduino device that has a screen that's about as big as your thumbnail. And it has a whopping 96 pixels by 64 pixels. So I coded up a Pac-Man game for it. And the other one is a Pokemon-like game, except instead of just evolving your Pokemon, you get to paint them however you want. Now, this is what I don't do, but it's not because I don't want to do them. It's just a little time. I just haven't had the time to investigate it. So 3D graphics, it's one of those things of I can get by with 2D graphics. You know, if I need to, I can make some artwork. If I know people I can get artwork from, that sort of thing. 3D modeling, I don't know where to begin with that, so I just haven't bothered to get into that yet. Android, again, I would like to write some programs for it, but the time just never seems to be there. For the web, I have actually done one game on it. It was for my son because he was studying the states in the state capitals. And so we made this little, he was attacking some state and he would have to figure out the name of the state or the creature would destroy the state. And so I went over and made a digital version of it later. But that's the extent of what I've done on web games at the moment. All right, so you're interested in doing a game. Why would you develop under Linux? I mean, the players are mostly under Windows. My answer to that is that you're going to need some libraries in order to do different things, like setting up, doing graphics, doing sound. And so in order to set up my Linux environment to develop, assuming I already had a C compiler installed, I could go over and do that command under Fedora, and I would then have the development libraries for SDL2, SDL2 image, SDL2 library mixer, and Boost. And then with that G++ command, I could get a game. Nice and simple. Now, if you're not developing under Linux, you want to develop under Windows, the steps get a little more complicated. Because you have to download each library individually, there's no package manager handling that for you. There's no standard as to where they're going to put the include files. So after you've downloaded everything, you then have to set up your, in your project, the include paths for everything. Now I put up that I installed Boost as well. Boost, it doesn't even come pre-compiled. So if you, so does that mean you should give up on Windows? I don't think so. Windows is still where the majority of players are. So having a Windows version help in your game. With BT Builder, one of the games I've been making. I didn't have any artwork for it. So I had some little prototype artwork in there, and there was another artist who went over and said that, you know, he could see the promise of the game and he started doing artwork for it. But at the time, he couldn't test the artwork. He would have to send it to me. I could then tell him, all right, this works or it doesn't work. So what I ended up doing was I ended up getting the cross compiler that's available under Fedora. So basically, it's the exact same commands to install under to install the development environment for installing SDL2. You can install a cross compiler and build for Windows. I still have a bit of an issue with Make. I haven't been able to get CMake to work so that it builds that it can generate a makefile that'll work to cross-compile. So I end up having 2 makefiles still, but I'm hoping that a problem that I had that someone finally told me how to resolve will fix that. I just haven't gotten around to testing it yet. Now, there are other libraries than SDL2. I happen to use that one. It's the Simple Direct Media Library. It goes over and sets up a window and you can do graphics in it. It handles input, so you can get keyboard and mouse and controller input. There are other libraries you can use. The Ostrich Riders, I believe, uses a library called SFML. I stick to SDL2 mainly because I like it. It also doesn't change that much. In a previous version of SDL, that's still installed on all, or still available on distributions along with SDL2. And so your programs will still keep running. With SFML, the Ostrich Riders didn't compile anymore because they had done an update to the library and they decided they didn't like the naming convention. So they changed the naming convention and all programs broke for no extra functionality. That tends to lead me not to use those libraries.
Yeah, I noticed you said you developed on Fedora.
Yes.
Have you also done development under other distros?
I haven't installed Ubuntu. I do have a Pocket chip, and that has a Debian distribution installed on it.
Okay.
It's just as easy. The commands are just different from using DNF. You use apt.
AppCat.
Yeah. But yeah, frankly, I don't look at the distribution as being a big divider at this point. They all are pretty similar, and most of them you can install the same software on. I just started with Red Hat, and so I stayed with Red Hat, and when they became Fedora, I went with Fedora. All right, so you've convinced game development. Way to go. So what do you need? Well, you actually need a lot to do game development. Depending on the game, you may not need all of these roles, but invariably you need at least some of them. You know, maybe you're doing a puzzle game that has no story in it, and you could skip having a writer. But you might not, because maybe you need someone that you're not good at writing and the instructions that you have in the game are just awful. So you might still need someone to help out for that sort of thing. The basic thing is that most games are developed by a team of people. And so you may not be a good game designer or a good artist, but if you get a team together, you can develop a game. Developing it by yourself is much harder. So if you don't have these people, what can you do? If you have no game designer, the easiest thing to do is to look at what other games there are and just clone an existing game. Pretty much every person who starts doing game development or open source game development, I would say they probably always do that. You always start with some vision of it's like this game, and you start building off of it. And over time, you may decide, you know what, there's this feature that I always wanted in it that it didn't have, and you put it in. Maybe the feature works great. Maybe it ends up being a poor design. And so you iterate over time. And so we have ostrich riders again. There's the BT Builder, which is a clone of the Bard's Tale construction set. If you notice a theme with the Devil's Whiskey, I like the Bard's Tale games, so I built a construction set for them. Partially because the Bard's Tale construction set is really awful. So I decided to make one that was more like the actual Bard's Tale games, and that's what I ended up with. All right, so there's also, I should mention, there's a website, I think it's osgameclones.org, although I could be wrong, but it has a list of open source clones. So you can go there and search for a game that you like, and you can see if anyone has made a clone off of it. They're not all direct clones. Some of them have new features and stuff. So what if you have no programmer? My answer is in general, you're out of luck. You're not going to make a game without a programmer in general. You can recruit a programmer. There are some game maker programs out there. So up here we have Twine. Twine is an interactive fiction creator. So like a choose your own adventure book type thing. So people have said that this is actually one of the best things for a budding game developer because anyone can do that. All you need to know is how to write, and you can create a choose your own adventure story. There are also various level designers in games. So up here you've got the level designer for Super Tux 2. So maybe you want to make a Super Mario type game. You could do that to design levels. Now, without a programmer, you're not going to go very far from what the game has in it. You're just going to tweak it. I have been playing around with a commercial program that I recently got, RPG Maker MV. It's very powerful and can allow you to create a game. I'm not sure I would say that it allows you to create a game without knowing how to program. It has an event system in it that it's easier than a programming in C or something, but you still have to understand the concepts of programming in order to really get the best use out of it. You know, if this is the first time you're seeing if statements, it's going to be a little rough. Now, one thing to keep in mind is even if you are a programmer or have a programmer, taking a game takes a lot of time. So you should try to do as little work as possible, which frankly, you should be trying to do anyways, because who wants to do work? So I mentioned that I use the SDL2 library. I also tend to use a library called XPAT, which allows me to parse files. I also like a library called FS. Allows you to file or some other archive file as if it was expanded out already. So you can go over and do development with a big directory of files. It's much easier to do development that way. And then when you finally deploy it, you go over and you zip them all up. And so there's just one file for the whole data for the game. Kind of like the old WAD files for Doom. There are various engines out there. I have not used them. I've heard a lot of good things about Godot, but I have not gotten around to trying it out. It is a very low level engine to some degree, so it's not something that someone can just start using if you don't know how to program, but it does allow you to create a fair amount. I've seen someone was creating a Metroid-like game with it that looked pretty interesting.
You sure it's not pronounced Godo?
I don't know how it's pronounced. And the other one here I have is Illich. I don't even know how to pronounce that one at all. That one's used by, I know it's used by several games, Mind Test, Super Tux Kart, and there's a couple other open source games that use it. I don't know too much about it. I haven't programmed with it. I have done mods to Mind Test, which is a Minecraft-like game, but all the mods are done in Lua, so I've never actually dealt with the actual core of the game. And that is a good thing to bring up is